Hey guys, welcome to the video. This video is a big one because in this video, hopefully, we'll actually be starting up the Ecotec. Now, I've been working like a crazy person for the last 3 days trying to tie up some of the loose ends, and I think I've got everything taken care of. Let me show you real quick what I've done. The Ecotec computer, the ECM, does not look at the oil pressure. There's no oil pressure switch. There is an oil pressure switch on the system, but it doesn't have anything to do with the ECM controlling the motor. So I put in this autometer oil pressure sending unit. If you can see, this is the port where from the factory there's an oil pressure switch on the block, but I didn't want just a switch. I wanted it to read pressure. So I've got a little fitting that comes off here, and then I've got a 90-degree fitting, and then here's the electronic oil pressure sending unit, and then here's the wire that heads up to the dash. And then up here I mounted the autometer gauge on the dashboard. The reason I did that is I had some questions, or I had some concerns that because my Ecotec is mounted at such an angle, I read some stuff online where oil return was going to be a problem, and because it's a motor that's got 113,000 miles from the junkyard, I want to be able to monitor my oil pressure. Then I told you in some of the other videos that I was going to temporarily install the fuel tank from the actual Chevy Cobalt that I got the motor out of, and that's this. I rigged up a temporary support here that holds the fuel cell up high enough that I can still get to my battery disconnect switches, and then it holds it at a good angle. It's temporary. I've got the factory fuel pump here. I've got the wiring going to the fuel pump, and then I've got fuel hose that goes to a factory fuel filter, and then from the factory fuel filter it heads on up to the fuel rail. And then I've got a very temporary fuel filler set up. Obviously none of this is meant to be long term, but I couldn't figure out exactly how or where I wanted to make or install a fuel cell. Sometimes when I find myself in a situation like that, if I can rig up something temporary, if I can get the motor running and make sure that everything on the motor end is operating properly, in the meantime I can put more thought into what type of fuel cell I want to make and where I want to make it and things like that. So because of that, I just put this fuel cell in there, and that'll get me by for now, but that's by no means going to be long term. Another thing that I did is, if you've been watching a lot of my videos, you saw that I'm running this off of lithium batteries, and they're pretty small. And my end game was to have 2 of them installed, so that, if one went dead or something on the trail, I could have another one. And with the air-cooled motor, one of those lithium batteries cranked it over, no problem. Well, with the Ecotec, it's larger. I think it's got higher compression. It's just a bigger motor, all in all. The one battery was able to crank it over, but it was really slow. So I also installed my second disconnect, and I installed the second lithium battery in there. So now when I go to crank it over, I actually flip both of the switches, and then I'm getting the cranking power out of both of those batteries. So what I need to do now, what I'm going to do right now is, first thing, I'm going to pull the coil packs off of the motor. I'm going to pull the 4 spark plugs out, and I'm just going to crank it over until I build oil pressure, because I don't know when the last time this motor ran. I want to make sure that it has oil pressure before I go to start it up. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, I've got the coil packs off and the spark plugs out, so I'm going to turn on both batteries and then crank her over and see if the oil pressure builds. I think I'm at the point where I want to start it. Now I have to think through and think if I took everything. I cranked it over, gave it oil pressure, that went fine. I added gas to the tank. I'll inspect it one more time, but I didn't see any leaks. I've turned the fuel pump on. I've watched the fuel lines fill up. I bled it off of the fuel rail. I bled air off until I got fuel. So I think I've got fuel most of the way, all the way up to the fuel rail. I didn't see any leaks on any of the fuel lines. I'm really nervous, I'll be honest with you. But I think I'm at that point, so I'm gonna hop out, give everything one more check out, throw a couple more chocks under the wheels, and then we'll hop back in the cab here and crank it up and see what happens. Alright, I think I've checked everything I can check. Turn on power to the motor, power for the ignition, turn on my code scanner, make sure it's in neutral. Did I look nervous? I am nervous. Alright, here we go. Clutch in, fuel pump. It ran pretty good. A little bit of a burple right off idle, but you know. Let's go back. I can smell some stuff. Fired right up though. Let's just reflect on that for a second. That was pretty awesome. That's a lot of work, you know, that went into getting it to that point. A lot more work than I thought. It was kind of, in one way, it was a little bit less work than I thought, and then in another way, it was more work than I thought. And what I mean by that is some of the stuff like bolting the engine up, finding a radiator, putting it in position, running the hoses, seemed like a daunting task, but it wasn't really. Once I got into it and started doing it, the programming, you know, all I did was send my computer to AlphaFab, and they programmed it and gave it back to me. I don't know anything about it other than I plugged it in, hooked everything up to it, and you just saw I cranked it up and it started up. So I think what I'm going to do now is start adding antifreeze, check for leaks. I got to put hose clamps on all of my fittings, and I think I need to put a gasket on the thermostat housing, take care of some things like that. So I think that's going to be it for this video. It was actually a little bit anticlimactic because I kind of anticipated some more problems on firing it up. I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that it went smooth. And I'm glad that you guys were able to watch it. That was the first time. That was honestly the first time that I've started the Ecotec. That was it on film. I mean, it went flawless. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope it's helping you. I'll have another video with the cooling system done and all that, and probably tweaking a couple of things, and then I'll have another video with the final costs and some opinions of the Ecotec, and then of course, obviously, hopefully within the next couple of days here, I'll have a video with the first test drive with the Ecotec, and I'm really excited about that. So, thanks for watching the video, guys. Hope it helps you out, motivates you. Go out in your garage, your shop, your backyard, whatever. Work on something of your own. I'll see you on the next video. Take care.